Hello there, Cody here. So today we're going to be talking about the Ouija board. So this is quite a controversial subject. It is challenging to talk about this in a way that doesn't incentivize people to use Ouija boards because they can be quite dangerous, of course, if you do not understand what you're doing and the tool that you're utilizing. So I first want to say I don't recommend using Ouija boards. This is something that you only want to utilize with other people, particularly people who are very adept at navigating the spiritual world, that understands this particular tool of mediumship, what to do and what not to do. This is not a how-to video. I'm not going to be talking about how to use the Ouija board. I'm just going to be talking about my experiences having used the Ouija board over a decade ago many times, with both good experiences and bad experiences, and how those experiences shaped me and informed the progression of my spiritual awakening journey. So I had many experiences with the paranormal since I was quite young, and I've chronicled so much of that, of course, on here. But I did want to talk about this experience, and I can talk about this for hours. So I'm going to try to condense it to just talking about the experiences and what I learned from that now over 10 years later. I'm also going to be giving just little disclaimers and things here and there. Again, I don't recommend using Ouija boards. I would actually say do not use them. You absolutely need to know, again, how to navigate the spiritual world, how to use the Ouija board, how to use that tool. You have to remember to say goodbye at the end, because you are opening and closing portals. You're opening doors to other vibrational frequencies. Spirits are condemned to specific frequencies, specific vibrations. So there is light and there is also more dark energies, dark frequencies that we can connect to and feel. What is so powerful for me about the Ouija board and those experiences for me was that they were shared. Most of the paranormal experiences that you hear from people, as well as myself, and I'm calling them paranormal, but another word for them would be spiritual experiences, because they're quite beautiful as well. The thing about, again, the Ouija board experience is they weren't alone. They were always with other people. And to have such a visceral spiritual experience with other people who are witnessing what is happening in real time is something that will never leave you. You will never forget seeing and experiencing the non-physical world when it is shared with other people. So I was aware that the Ouija board is a powerful tool to connect to the spiritual world. I was always very fascinated about the spiritual world. I was always fascinated about conversations that people weren't willing to have. This invisible reality that we just act like is not there, that I knew was there because I had had experiences. And I knew that there is some key, if you've accessed that will help me for the rest of my life with whatever I'm doing. To understand that we are a physical being with a spiritual counterpart, with a non-physical counterpart, is very illuminating. And we will talk more about that as well, what that means to understand that you do have a spiritual self and there is a spiritual world that we can align with here in the physical world. It's not about entering the spiritual world, it's about aligning with it and utilizing and leveraging our non-physical energy that is connected to the universe to guide and direct us. There are all different types of energies, high vibrational energies, low vibrational energies. Our heart, our soul, our spirit is light. So when we connect to the spiritual space from that core of us, the only thing that you will bring through that channel is light. What's interesting about the Ouija board is that it is a tool of mediumship to connect to lower vibrational frequencies. It's very hard for these higher vibrational entities to lower their frequency enough to participate in mediumship through a Ouija board. It's much easier actually for them to connect to you through your consciousness, but most people don't have the patience to meditate or develop that skill set or redevelop it, because we're all connected to it. You can feel the air of spirit in another child or an infant, and it does disappear for a lot of people until you reconnect with that part of yourself. So we'll have that conversation as well, because we have to understand, even though the Ouija board is quite dangerous, it opens up a conversation that we all do need to have, and I realized that as quite a catalyst early on in my spiritual journey, okay, utilizing the Ouija board and having that physical evidence. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about some of my early experiences, the more prominent ones that kind of set the stage for a lot of what was to come. So when I was about 18 or 19 years old, I remember using the Ouija board with a friend of mine. I don't remember who gave us the Ouija board. I believe it was a friend of mine from home. And I had brought it with me. And I remember understanding what to be cautious about using the board. I had, read enough about it to know the basics, and the basics honestly were pretty accurate. There's some more things that we obviously incorporated, like sage and crystals, and we'll talk about that as well. At one point we used a Lemurian quartz as the planchette, and the way that crystal danced and twirled across the board was quite fascinating. And instead of pointing to the letters, it was just going over the letters, and you would see the letter through the quartz. We realized that these quartz were energy amplifiers that the spirits were able to use easier. But that being said, we also learned, I don't even know where to begin here, but one of the spirits was saying that they were in the crystal. Until we would say goodbye, and that's when we close the portal. Just talking about this, first of all, I just want to say I was aware, and we were aware of, again, the basics. We established a system. We made sure that we only wanted to connect to higher vibrational entities. What we learned was the ones that were coming through, you could feel the shift in density, okay? Our curiosity really steered the ship here. And when we began using the board, it worked immediately. At first, it was me and one of my other friends who I'm still very close friends with today. We pulled out the board and we started immediately getting responses, okay? First, it was a bit slow. What's important is to have both of your hands lightly, on the planchette. And the planchette, or the pointer, right, moves across the board and spells out various different things. I can't speak enough to when this is happening and what is going through your head, realizing we are connecting to another spirit. And what that signifies, again, if there is a spiritual world, why aren't we using it? And that's what propelled, again, the next 10 years and beyond to today, for me in my spiritual journey. All of the questions that it prompts, you understand that these things do happen for a reason. And, a Ouija board is not the only spiritual experience to, catalyze one over the course of their life. There are so many different experiences. This was one for me. Setting the stage, we lit white candles. We had our favorite crystals out. I had black tourmaline, which is a protection crystal. We had our Lemurian quartz. We had angelite. We had whatever we had at the time, Being in college, we didn't really have that many resources like that at the time, but we made with what we could do. At that point, I was already connecting to spirits, and I could already communicate. I was already a medium. I just wasn't practicing it, right? And, it wasn't work at that point, So I realized our experience was quite unique, perhaps because I have met people who said that the board didn't work at all. Maybe it won't work for them. But again, do not ever use the board alone. Do not ever use the board alone. I will talk more about that a little bit later. That is an invitation to allow entities to occupy your body. Do not do that. Every time we used the board, it would work immediately. And at first it moved quite soft, and then it was sort of darting, to the different letters very, very quickly, not necessarily aggressively. You could tell and you could feel the energy in your hands and in your body when it was a darker energy and when it was a lighter energy. We could tell it was almost like this static would sort of come into this space when a darker energy was approaching. We set the intention to connect to our spirit guides or spirit helpers, okay? Again, you have to be very perceptive, very attuned to yourself and to your own body in order to understand your own intuition and understand when a darker energy is coming in versus a light energy. Can you tell when someone's a bad person versus a good person? If you can feel that energy, you can feel the energy coming through in the board as well. So we set up this system. We were asking for our spirit guides to come through. One of my spirit guides came through at the time as what I call a subdominant spirit guide. His name was Will. He spelled Will. And Will set up a system with us that he would spell the word sage when a dark energy was approaching the board. And when he would start spelling sage, sometimes we would be having a full conversation with him through the board. I know this sounds crazy, guys, bear with me. And this is why I really want to anchor all of this in understanding how powerful it is and how awakening it is, regardless, of the good or bad experiences, to understand that there is a spiritual world and there are spiritual beings out there to either guide you. Some of them have malevolent intentions, some have good intentions, right? But to know that that world exists and what you can unlock, knowing that you can leverage that non-physical energy that you are connected and tapped into, particularly that light energy, is something that will change your life forever. The support that you realize that you always have when you understand and when you awaken to this realization that there is a non-physical world, that there is a spiritual world, you will never be the same. And you will always find a way to reconnect with it. In the beginning, right, when we're having spiritual awakenings, most people start leaning more into learning about the paranormal, right? Learning about the paranormal, learning about ghost hunting, things like that. They're dabbling in, exploring this idea and entertaining the part of them that knows that there is something else out there, but it's being confronted by the logic that is conditioned through society in them. So they're at war in themselves, right? The logical mind versus the spiritual mind are sort of clashing. And what results is sort of entertaining this idea of the spiritual world more in lower vibrational spaces, such as ghost hunting, such as dabbling with these tools that they don't quite understand yet. But once you cross that threshold and understand, well, if there's a spiritual world, maybe there's a spirit in me. And what does that mean? And when you start exploring, okay, well, what's the nature of my spirit? And how do I make my spirit shine brighter? These sort of conversations start to unfold, right? And we don't talk about this enough in regard to the paranormal or the exploration of, spirits in general. Learning about the Ouija board. No one's having this conversation as well, okay? So even though it was quite scary and dangerous, some of the energies that were coming through, what was evident was we were training our intuition as well. We could tell when a dark energy was coming in, and we would stop and we would sage. We would clear the energy, and then there would be the good spirits that would come back. And they would give us great advice. My friend's guide's name was Sylvia, and another one was Fred. And they gave us advice that kind of was prophetic in many ways. I remember they told her, my friend, they told her to expect cutting ties with people that you're really close with right now, and that it would be okay. But they're just like not the right people for her, which she didn't understand at the time, but absolutely did make sense. It told me a lot of things that I hesitate to talk about just because it was so powerful, it's so spiritual, it's so intimate, but it's just hard to believe, It's just hard to believe if you weren't there, I think above all, what was the most powerful thing about it was affirming my intuition. I was realizing, okay, yes, I'm tapping into things. Yes, I'm interpreting things. And what was interesting too was even when I wasn't touching the planchette and other people were touching the planchette, I was receiving what they were saying before it was even being spelled out. So they would start moving in the direction of what they wanted to say, the letter, and then in order to speed up the conversation, I would just say out loud what they were trying to spell. And it was almost like we were working together, and you could feel your energy working with their energy to allow this communication to facilitate. And eventually it was so fluid and it was so smooth and it was spelling out everything. And I was able to hear before they were doing it. It would freak me out because I was touching it too at some points, and I was like, okay, well, maybe I knew I wasn't moving the planchette. And I knew I wasn't subconsciously maneuvering it because you're barely even touching it, you know. You're not even touching it at certain points. Your hand's kind of lifting off a bit. But you really should always have, you know, both hands on the planchette at all times. I could feel and I could tell what it was moving to. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna step off of this. You guys touch it and I will just see if I can actually hear what's being spelled before it's spelled out. And I was able to kind of interpret and see and sort of telepathically connect with this spirit. And again, it's so powerful just to understand what that means when you realize that there is support that is unseen around you all the time. And it depends on where you are, what your intentions are, and where your heart is, that determines what type of energies you are connecting to, what type of spirits you're connecting to, whether it's light spirits or dark spirits, and how they are influencing you. You can be influenced from the light, but is your heart in the right place? What is your intentions? You have to be really clear on that because every intention is an energetic signal. This really leans more into how I first began understanding the law of attraction, because I can understand that fear was attracting certain spirits, and then love was also attracting certain spirits. When you would hold a really strong intention to connect to love and light, that was what would come through, you know. And if something else was coming through, because you're so secure on what your intention is, you can feel the deviation from the intention of that spirit versus, you know, where the vibration of your intention is within you. You can feel that discord, and that is what discernment is. And that was another lesson that I was able to take with me for the rest of my life, was understanding spiritual discernment, you know. And it's quite subtle, and you have to be that tuned into yourself and your heart and to light in order to interpret, you know, what exactly is coming through. Is this dangerous? Is this not? Again, I do not recommend using the Ouija board. Do not use this, do not use this, do not use this. The only scenario I can imagine, you know, where I would recommend, or not even recommend, I would say it's just okay to do it, you know, is if you are with a group of people, again, who are adept at navigating the spiritual world, know about how to protect themselves, and know how to use these tools of seance, okay? They know we are opening portals here. And every time you say goodbye, you have to wait for that planchette to go to goodbye. And what that is closing the portal. You have to remember to turn the board over afterward. There are so many things, okay? It was beautiful experiences, and we were able to share this with so many different people in college, guys. In college, you know where your head is at when you're in college at 18, 19 years old. And we're here awakening people, you know, on campus and bringing it to all these different places. But what we also learned was, again, not everyone's intention using the board is the same. And when there were different intentions, there were different sort of trickster spirits that would sneak on through. And we again had to be very, very adept at noticing that and deciphering and discerning, you know, what sort of energies were coming through. So it became this thing that sort of snowballed, you know, and affirmed my own intuition, enhanced my abilities of mediumship and channeling, because to have physical evidence immediately and things that they would confirm, things that they would say about our lives that were spot on, that nobody else would know. Okay, we actually recorded on our cell phones. I think it was just audio we recorded, but I think we did some videos as well. I have to see if I can find some of those where we were recording it. It was so profound, you know. We live in this world where most people don't even know this is real. Most people are trying to find a way through this world, or try to make it in this world, to become successful in this world without even knowing that this is real. We felt like we found a gold mine. We felt like we found diamonds, and we had access to something that you couldn't. In our minds, most people don't think you can even pay for it because they don't even know or believe that it's real. So the power that you leverage awakening to all of this really is life-changing, and really became a platform for so much to come later on in the future. Granted, I did not use the Ouija board anymore after college. I didn't need to. And again, it sort of just opened the gateway for me into higher forms of connection to spirituality, to spirit. Another tool we would utilize quite a bit that works quite similarly, and you do need to be careful with these as well, are pendulums. So pendulums also open portals. So if you're using pendulums, just know you are opening portals, and you should be closing them as well, okay? And even if you think it was fine, I promise you there are things in your energetic field around you that you might just not notice that are there. They could be bad, they could be good. It's sort of just like keeping, imagine just if you just kept your front door wide open. There can be good people that show up and come through your door, there can be bad ones. You don't really know. I've had experiences with pendulums. I remember utilizing it once, and I actually still have a video of it, which I refuse to put out there because my guides told me as well that that would also open portals for other people, meaning the spirits that came through while utilizing that pendulum would come through to the people who were watching it as well. I have learned to use them in more empowered ways. I just don't really use them at all anymore, to be honest. But that doesn't mean that they're always bad. But just know that they are things that can open doors. Utilizing these tools, I remember even asking about different public figures in the world. We asked the board and we asked the pendulum if there was any world leader right now that we should understand has malevolent intentions or is working with dark energies. And I'm not confirming or denying this. Again, this was probably in like 2011, 12. What it said was the Prime Minister of Australia is a reptilian. That's what it said. Again, not confirming, not denying, just saying the types of things that it was saying to us. It was telling us where lost objects were. It was telling us, you know, who works with the light, who works with the darkness, who has good intentions, who has bad intentions. We even asked about spiritual teachers. I asked about a number of them. I asked about spiritual books, you know, which ones to lean into, which ones to be careful for. And you could tell also the personality of the spirits, because it is energy. Over time, you know, we understand people based on how their energy vibrates. You know, you can tell someone's personality from their energy. And I remember just the personality of the spirit that we were connected to almost wanted to caution us, but like not scare us. So we went through a list of so many different public figures, famous people, and the personality of this spirit, this particular spirit that we were connecting to at the time, felt so sweet. It felt sweet because even when there was ones that we kind of liked, like certain public figures that we liked, you could tell that it was hesitant. Like it wouldn't just go to like, no, bad. It would move and it would like pause and be like, you could tell it was just holding space for our emotion and just trying to like gently help us understand, okay, this person is not who you think they are, but maybe there's something to benefit from them right now. It prophesies things about certain people in my life, certain people that I would know later on. Their message didn't make sense to me now at the time, but it makes sense to me now. I remember asking about these different powerful people that I was going to be working with at the time, and just really resonating with and connecting with at the time. And in my mind and in my heart, like, they were just just such beautiful people. They were well-meaning people. And I remember the planchette for some of them just kind of pausing. And I didn't understand the pause at the time. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, they're fine. They're a great person. They do great things. They have great intentions. And it would just pause. And it wasn't going to like bad. It wasn't saying like stay away. It was just like pause. And that pause, I thought about for so many years. And looking back, I realized that spirit was protecting me. I was protecting my emotions at the time that was like really identified with these people, and seeing no reality in which that they had any sort of bad intentions or would be bad for me. But it just sort of paused, and it like gently moved to like good and yes, I could detect that pause. And it wasn't until many, many, many years later where I understand that they were cautioning me. And how I interpret that pause in that moment was, these people are right for you right now, but they're not going to be right for you forever. And it was a powerful lesson of understanding that certain people are right for you right now, but that doesn't mean they'll be right for you forever. And it doesn't mean that those experiences are void either. They're here to take you to that next place. And when you're at that next place, it's okay to let go. And I found myself learning all of these spiritual lessons from these experiences and these sort of prophetic messages that I didn't see it as prophetic at the time, but now looking back, I realized the way the board was guiding us, because we used it in a conscious way, and we were very careful. We were not just kids that were just kind of playing around with it. We definitely did make mistakes, and I would be even more careful if I were to utilize that today, but I don't need to use that today, because those experiences, again, when you can affirm that so clearly, it's hard to shut off that part of your brain. And what I want to leave you all with is understanding that we do have a non-physical spiritual counterpart that is made of light. And when we find a way to create a relationship with that essence, it does silently guide you to where you need to be, who you need to be with, what you need to do. It is about alignment, and that's what spiritual alignment is. Not enough people kind of understand what it means. It means aligning your physical self with that spiritual, non-physical self, and how that becomes a compass for you in your life. So again, this is a cautionary tale. It's also a beautiful story, and it just is something to suggest that we have so many experiences in our lives that can be judged in so many different ways, but I promise you, it dovetails and folds into the chronicle of our soul's continuum in our life story in ways that you would never assume, but that do change and inform you for the rest of your life, in amazing ways. So your story's not over, and no experience is void. And there's so much more to talk about here if you guys have any more questions. I have a lot of stories like this. I want to talk next about my ayahuasca experiences. So if you guys want to hear that story or those stories as well, they were quite powerful, because I also did them with very powerful spiritual figures. And to navigate those experiences at that time, and what that awakened in me, and what that proves as well when you're able to step out of your body and experience the non-physical world, experience all of these dimensions of reality. I really want to talk about my ayahuasca experiences next, because in many ways, talking about the Ouija board experiences does remind me of the things that are unequivocally true and that you learn are true, that the world doesn't quite know yet when you have the depth of experience that you do have with Aya. And just talking about those journeying experiences that I had in Costa Rica, in the jungles of Costa Rica with a shaman, and some soul companions with me at the time, just the things that you see and what it makes you realize. I've never talked about it full length, and the messages keep unfolding, and the warnings that it had for me as well, all of them came true. There's so much to talk about there. So if you're interested in these stories, I have so many of them. You know, I did ayahuasca with a really, really powerful and famous spiritual teacher as well. And, you know, navigating those experiences are quite fascinating. So there's so much more to talk about here with the Ouija board and with other experiences like this. I kind of am feeling inspired to share some more things that just help us, and my intention is to help us remember that we are connected to spirit. And we kind of get lost in the noise, you know, and the mind and in the whys. I like to tell these stories because you have to connect to your spirit in order to hear it. You can't listen to this with the logical mind and receive it and understand it or interpret it. You're using different ears, your higher ears, right? When you listen to these stories and connect to them and relate to them and hear them. And ayahuasca was another one of those experiences that you really do have to hear it from a different place. You can't just hear it from, you know, a psychedelic place. You can't hear it from a logical space. It's just not really going to hold as much weight as the depth of the spiritual experience that is Mother Aya and journeying with Mother Aya and the many experiences that I've had with her. Doing that in Costa Rica as well. You guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it inspired you to reconnect. Take care, everybody.
With those down and tangled in your hair, stars pause just to stare. You drew circles on thoughtless, several